And just before you say anything in the comments, you get in the comments talking about like, oh, we called you an Oreo because you were anti-black. Remember, you don't know me. You have no idea who I am or the things that I believe as a child or now. So I'm 3 days removed. No, I think 2 days removed from a flu. So goddamn. Having your blackness questioned is the blackest thing that can happen to you. I heard that on a TikTok recently, and it really got me thinking, what standards do we use to determine someone's blackness, and why do those standards constantly change? Take this scene from The Blackening, for instance. There's this group of friends, all of them are black, and they are trapped in a creepy cabin on Juneteenth, and they have to play this game called The Blackening in order to escape. Crazy mascot, by the way. Crazy mascot. This is the type of shit you find in the thrift stores down here in the South. One of the questions of the game is to determine who in the group is the blackest.
The blackest?
And they can't determine it. All of them have some sort of trait or heritage that makes them the penultimate black person, even if before that game, that same trait or heritage was used to determine their lack of blackness.
Because every single time one of y'all make a joke, it's always, oh, Allison, you white this, Allison, you white that.
They end up choosing the quote-unquote whitewashed character in the end as punishment for him voting for Trump.
Twice?
And he ends up being the main villain. What's funny is that his motive for luring them all out to this creepy cabin and killing their friends and tormenting them is because they revoked his black card so many years ago. He didn't know how to play spades. And as the meme goes, no one was willing to teach him. Black people have never in the history of ever taught anyone else how to play spades, but somehow knowing how to play it is integral to our culture. How does one learn if no one's teaching it? God damn it. Oreo is a label so ancient that it might only make sense to my fellow zillennials. As the name suggests, it refers to someone who is black on the outside, but white on the inside. People younger than me might be more familiar with the term whitewashed. It practically means the same thing. My first memories of being called an Oreo are from middle school. I was very shy, lanky. I was an awkward kid who listened exclusively to the top 40 because that's what was playing on the radio. That's what my parents were playing. And I didn't yet have an identity of my own. In fact, most of the pop culture I consumed was extremely mainstream. And by the logic of systemic racism, that means it was brutally saturated by whiteness. Related, but kind of not, I remember watching the Hunger Games premiere in theaters with my white friend who claimed that Katniss was her, like she was Katniss, and for obvious reasons, obvious to her at least, I had to be Rue. Around that same time, in my mind, I was One Direction's biggest fan. I dodged the landmines planted in self-insert fanfiction that described YN as pale-skinned and blue-eyed. And none of that is to say that I was disconnected from black culture. I was a sponge, like all kids are. I come from a black family, obviously. I lived in a predominantly black area. My school was majority black, and I engaged heavily with black media. And still, I was called an Oreo. Some of the first people to call me that were my siblings, who lived lives and enjoyed things that at the time didn't seem that different from the life I lived or the things I enjoyed. Maybe there was something innate within me that felt alien to them, something that I did or said that got my black card revoked without my ever realizing it. Growing up, I was adamant about not being an Oreo. Being accused of one was like being accused of witchcraft. I knew that I was black and I enjoyed being so. And yet at every turn, I was told otherwise. No one would explain to me what made me white. And so over time, I had to come up with reasons for myself. And girl, this is where it gets messy. A few years ago, I made a similar video about the Oreo stereotype on my main channel. And the comments quickly proved to me why we will never have an honest conversation about this topic. Everyone is operating from different experiences and definitions of the stereotype itself. There's one group who believes that they were unjustly called Oreos, either due to their personal interests, their cadence, or their behavior. Then there's the next group who also believes that they were unjustly called Oreos, but When they open their mouth, they prove to us the divine nature of cause and effect. The accusations against them have nothing to do with their personal interests or their cadence, and in fact, it has everything to do with their negative view of blackness. The final group, I would say, is made up of people who were never called Oreos themselves because they were the main people doing the calling. From what I remember in my original comment section, this third group was adamant that they never called people Oreos because of some superficial reason, like, the music that person liked, or, the shows or the pop culture they ingested. But they called them Oreos because of their microaggressive attitude towards blackness. But how confusing is that? If you're only targeting people who are anti-black, and yet both groups of Oreos, including the one we've established is not anti-black, is being stuck with the label anyways, then who's driving this bus? The truth is, none of us are honest about the Oreo stereotype. Race and identity are so intimate in concept that trying to have an earnest conversation about them is futile. People, including me, will hem and haw and attempt to make themselves look better than they actually are because deep down they don't want to admit to alienating or being alienated, especially if the latter is caused by their own tumultuous relationship with their identity. But I have faith that here on youtube.com, we can have a productive conversation. We will have a productive conversation about a strenuous topic with little to no arguments or malice. My hope about this has never been proven wrong, ever. Honestly, I consider myself a part of Group A and Group B. In middle school, I was strictly Group A. Whenever the conversation of Oreo-ness came up, be it at school or at home, it was usually preceded by a comment about my interests. Like, oh, you like this music, you're an Oreo. Or, oh, you like this person, you're an Oreo. Oh, girl, that reminds me. Let me squeeze in a tangent here. So, my obsession with One Direction in middle school convinced my family that I was going to marry a white person. I rebuke that. Mind you, I have never dated a white person ever in my whole entire life. Ever. My family, on the other hand, can't say the same about them. Maybe the white people we dated along the way was just projection. In addition to my interest being called white, people also told me growing up that I talked white. This is one of those vague, incomplete accusations that leave too much to the imagination. Group C, the people who often do the accusing, never explain what they mean by such phrases. Like, what does talking white sound like? Is it cadence? Is it vocabulary? Is it subjects? What's worse is that because the Oreo accusation is so indistinct, the response to it can go a million different ways, with little to no reconciliation. We end up talking past each other or arguing about it with no end in sight. After being called an Oreo, Group A, who consider themselves unjustly persecuted, but otherwise have no sense of, anti-blackness, may begin to internalize a sense of anti-blackness. They may begin to believe that Black people aren't allowed to like the things that they like. Blackness in their mind becomes a confined space where you can't stretch too far or too wide without losing bits of your identity. Viewing Blackness as limited is dangerous. It's actually built upon a white supremacist lie. Blackness is expansive, it's flexible, it's culturally inventive. Why do you think so many versions of Blackness exist, and why so many people, regardless of interests or cadence, have stories related to getting their Black card revoked? There's no one way to be Black, and that itself is the blackest thing about us. But Group A, who were shamed for the things that they like, think that in order to be Black, in order to be accepted by those who have called them an Oreo, one must cage themselves into a vague, narrow idea of what Blackness is. Group B is different. They commit war crimes. I'm joking. Group B might have gone through the same thing as Group A. They were culturally conditioned to believe certain things about Blackness. In the process, though, they took a hard right turn. Literally a hard right turn. In the absence of being told what makes them sound white or behave white, these types of Oreos tend to fill in the blanks using social messaging, which is usually anti-Black in itself. Like, when I posted my first Oreo video a few years back, the comment section became saturated with people who I consider Group Bs. These were people who thought they were unjustly accused, but they were always proving their accuser's point. They would leave comments like,
well, just because I speak proper English and act like I got some sense and I'm not running around here acting ghetto.
I just fucking deleted the video. Like, oh my God. This statement is anti-Black. It's racist. It actually bounces on Black stereotypes crazy style while implicitly degrading Blackness itself. It equates being Black to being ghetto and speaking improper English. There is no improper English. There is only standardized English. Standardized meaning it was forced upon us as normal. AAVE, which many Group B commenters are referencing, is a dialect. And like any other dialect, it has a robust grammar structure and it follows specific linguistic rules. You might think that it's easy to speak AAVE from the outside looking in, and therefore you think no thought goes behind it, no education goes behind it. But just listen to a white person who has never been around Black people before who tries to use AAVE. Listen to a K-pop song. You gon' finna catch me doesn't make sense because it's being used by someone who isn't fluent in the dialect but is attempting to use it to sound cool. AAVE is so broad, it varies by region, it varies by state. You don't see me using like AAVE that someone in Detroit would use. Because I'm Southern. My AAVE is Southern. Not to mention that there is a deep intersection between AAVE and ballroom language, which has become increasingly popular, and there are people who use it who are not in those spaces, who don't know how to use those words or that language. Talking white doesn't always refer to language. It can refer to cadence or tone. I recently watched a TikTok by this Black man who was questioning why white women are so comfortable around him. Maybe this is not woke, but I knew the answer before I even opened the comments. Like, if you close your eyes and let stereotypes guide you, you can almost imagine a white surfer dude on the other end of the phone. He had a very California-esque accent. Super mega valley. It wasn't his vocabulary that sounded white. I know nothing about him, so it's not his interest or anything like that. It was just his intonation. But then again, not every Oreo speaks like a surfer, so we're back to square one. What does talking white mean? Group C, the people who accuse Oreos of talking white, could very well be tapping into the same anti-Black rhetoric as Group B. They genuinely might think that Blackness is a very limited existence where even the language is constricted. Group C will never admit that though, because they claim that they're doing this for the greater good of Black people. And Group B will never admit it either. Group C probably don't even know why they made the accusation to begin with. Whiteness is quite literally a liminal space. It's perceived as penultimate normalcy by design. This is a great book to read about that kind of subject. It doesn't have clear markers or definitions. And so being told that you act white or speak white as a non-white person is extremely vague. Talking white could also very well mean that you don't speak a certain dialect or, use certain slang. And that's just kind of a product of your environment, like I grew up with very old parents. My parents were much older than most other people. And so they didn't use a lot of the same rhetoric and slang and dialect that my siblings picked up from like the people they hung out with. And I didn't hang out with anybody. I hung out with my parents. So as I got older, I transitioned from the relatively harmless nature of Group A to the horrors of Group B. It was a chaotic fall from grace, which I have no excuse for other than the fact that I started listening to rock music. Talk about a far-right pipeline. Fellow Tumblerinos might remember the era of microaggressive emo memes where people would compare rock and rap. It would be Black Veil Brides on one side and Nicki Minaj on the other. A great emphasis would be placed on how this side is real music, while this side is culturally dead gibberish. Of course, this could be seen as self-defense if you really stretch to make that argument. Tired of being the butt of everyone's jokes, emo kids fight fire with fire. But also, the picture's just incorrect. Just it's negating her personality in politics. Nicki Minaj is a great musical artist. The lady is a lyricist. These memes often have a fundamental misunderstanding of, I would say, rap music, but also any music that's just not, screamo. The fun that rap music seeks to have, the communication skills it requires. I mean, artists need a firm grasp of language, vocabulary, grammar, cultural references, literary charm, and so forth. Just because the music sounds simple to you, or just because it gets the club shaking, that's probably why I get called an Oreo. Okay. It doesn't mean that it's incompetent, which is what those memes are trying to convey. I also went to a Pierce the Veil concert recently, and one of the openers was Eka Vandal, who is a person of color. She does actually a mix of different genres, and I think one of them is kind of maybe alternative hip hop. And I remember everyone in the crowd was just so evil about that. They were so evil. And then you go on to I went onto Instagram after, and people were like, yeah, I didn't really like her, it's like Cardi B was on stage, and it's that's microaggression because the music sounds nothing like Cardi B, but it's just because it was hip hop, and it was just because it was a person of color on stage, which is really weird to me because Pierce the Veil are mixed people. They are mixed with white and Mexican, but I try not to get angry about things anymore. So unfortunately for me, I became locked in this echo chamber for a while. Not only did I stop listening to rap, I also stopped listening to mainstream pop. I stopped listening to One Direction, which really sucks in hindsight for obvious reasons, because I missed out on a time when they were all still alive and together and having, fun. While it seems like harmless Tumblr politics, this mindset is an extension of the larger white supremacist plot to degrade blackness. It's a slippery slope that most young people don't even realize they're falling into. A combination of purely incidental and terrible circumstances pulled me out before I got too deep. I was deeply immersed in Black culture. I had a majority Black friend group because I lived, again, in a majority Black area. These friends loved on me, and I loved on them in return. I was radicalized at a very young age, particularly by the murder of Trayvon Martin, followed by the murder of Michael Brown. I watered and strengthened my love for my Black identity, even in the smallest, whitest town once I moved later in my teen years on the planet. All of it kept me tethered, and thank God for that. Thank you, Jesus, for that. Thank you, God. Thank you. Maybe the root of our problem here is not someone's entrance or cadence. Maybe the foundation of one's Oreo-ness stems from an investment in whiteness, per the book that I just referenced, George Lipshitz's The Possessive Investment in Whiteness. We're so caught up in the visuals and the superficial that we rarely contend with the deeper problem of being whitewashed. A possessive investment in whiteness can occur across race and across culture, but I think in terms of Oreo-ness, I think it occurs when people are determined to forsake their identity, forsake the struggle of their peers and ancestors in pursuit of some imagined liberation under white supremacy. I mean, we see this with the Candace Owens of the world, the Kanye Wests, the Nicki Minaj's recently. Ooh. We see this with Lil Wayne and Snoop Dogg aligning themselves with Donald Trump, 50 Cent as well. These people are not Oreos. They are Black people who uphold the ideals of white supremacy because they think the grift is beneficial. They think that investing in the lie of whiteness, which promises them some kind of return, whether it be, financial again, or social or judicial, without realizing that the only return you receive for dipping your toe in hierarchical violence is a karmic return. A karmic. Play nice. You better play nice. I think this is the conversation we should be having in earnest. These are the kinds of people we should be rigorously challenging. Not just Black women who get small box braids and tucks them behind their ears. Goodness gracious, who cares? Who cares? If you feel concerned about a person's perceived Oreo-ness, particularly in how it relates to their interests, speech, or behavior, by all means, if you know them and you are close to them and you actually like them, check in. I've seen it time and time again on TikTok where masses of people will bully someone they find whitewashed, and that ends up driving that person further away because they don't know what the fuck's going on. They're like 12 and like millions of people online are calling them names and stripping them of their identity just because of the way they talk or who they hang out with or what have you. Being called an Oreo when you're young or culturally clueless isn't a hook in the water ready to pull you out of the depths. It's confusing, it's alienating. And when weaponized improperly, it could be extremely damaging to one's concept of self. I mean, to this day, I'm about to turn 27 in February. I still worry to this day that I'm not black enough. All because of a few jokes made at my expense when I was a child. And I would hate for this to continue happening to young black people who are just trying to find themselves. I promise we have bigger fish to fry than a quirky black girl who wears her colorful braids tucked behind her ears. I promise you, I promise. We have bigger fish to fry than a random high school child who likes country music, who speaks with a country accent because she lives in the country. Girl, I think we have bigger fish to fry. It's like a CIA operative. Like, it has to be. It has to be.